As lords of the hidden realms, we are here to record the final chronicle of a dying world. You see, we observed its final act not as simple witnesses, but as the architects of its necessary conclusion. This is the record of that grand and terrible design. For eons, we watched the same pointless struggle play out, absolute order versus its simple negation. A sovereign says, "I am," and a shadow just whispers back, "You are not." It was a stagnant loop, a philosophical trap that someone had to break. And that someone was us. So the stage for this final act was what we call the two-fold Atlantis. Now you have to understand, this wasn't a place you could find on any map. It was a philosophical battleground, a world that had to die twice over just to be reborn into something new. And this confrontation, it was preordained by us. It was a required shift in what we call the Abyssal Dialectic. See, the simple conflict of opposites had to end. We needed a third synthesizing power to bring about the final entropy. Okay, so let's document the first force in this equation, the crystalline king, Glaucus. This guy wasn't a king by birthright or some divine gift. No, he was an entity of pure, uncompromising will. And here's the crucial part. Glaucus achieved godhood, his apotheosis, not because it was given to him, but through a sheer, almost violent assertion of his own existence. Through what he'd call intellectual intuition, he looked at all of reality, everything he called the not I, and just declared that he was the only meaningful cause. He literally willed himself into a god. And this just brilliantly shows how he built his divinity. That chemota event wasn't just a word. It was a moment of realization that rewrote his very atoms into a crystalline lattice. It turned his entire being into a planetary-scale supercomputer. Through that, he could command water in all its forms, ice, liquid, vapor, making the entire ocean an extension of his own ego. And his little pact with Zeus? Well, that just weaponized it, marrying the crushing pressure of the abyss with the fire of the heavens. This really gets to the core of his master morality. He didn't see the world as something to protect or steward. Oh no, it was his personal laboratory. All of life, every person was just the not I, raw material waiting to be ordered and perfected by his sovereign will. But for every absolute assertion, an equal and opposite force just has to emerge. So now we document the second player in this tragedy, the perfect antagonist, born from the king's own magical arrogance. Now, what's really fascinating here is that the captain doesn't want a throne. He's not a rival. He's more like a function, an accident of logic that was spawned from the magical runoff of the king's own creation. He has no desire to rule or to build. He is simply a force of pure, undiluted consumption. His weapon is something we call chaos water. Just imagine a substance brewed from the leftover energy of a god's birth, the Palingenios. It's this predatory liquid that doesn't just destroy, it dehydrates. It's designed to completely bypass the king's divine logic and rot the very souls of the living, dissolving everything into a parched, blank slate. And here you can see the perfect opposition laid bare. Where the king asserts order with his crystalline lattice, the captain just negates it with chaos water. One seeks to build a divine presence out of absolute idealism. The other only wants total dehydration, a goal born from a jagged, all-consuming nihilism. They aren't just enemies. They are to each other philosophical impossibilities. And his philosophy is absolute. For the captain, there are no deals, no alliances, no authority he recognizes. There is only a world full of moisture, a resource waiting to be harvested for his insatiable, terminal thirst. So we observed as these two absolutes finally met. And it was never going to be a battle of armies or of strength. No. It was always destined to be a reaction, a kind of chemical and philosophical decay, and we made sure it would be final. The process of ruin was methodical. Once it made contact, chaos water didn't shatter the lattice, it infected it. An electrochemical migration started, corrupting the king's biological computer from the inside out, causing catastrophic failure. His greatest strength, his divine logic, became the very instrument of his downfall. His digital soul just rotted away to nothing. Philosophically, the captain was the perfect Anstoß. That's the external shock that the king's self-contained ego could never, ever predict. And the ultimate irony, which we quite enjoyed, is that the king's very assertion of I am provided the raw energy that created and sustained the parasite destined to destroy him. And this gets to the central question of this whole tragedy, a question we ourselves designed. Why does the brightest light inevitably summon the deepest shadow? Well, the answer isn't in the conflict itself, but in the synthesis that we engineered. And now we reveal our true purpose. As the Lords of the Hidden Realms, our role was never just to watch. It was to move beyond that boring binary deadlock and synthesize a new, more terrible, and more final reality. Let's be perfectly clear. We designed this outcome. The collision between the king and the captain was not some random accident. It was the crucible for the birth of the triadic nightmare, the end of the old world's tedious little argument. Our methods were precise. We awakened the Sea Stormer, a being with the king's powerful lattice but fueled by the void's pure malice. We used our rune magic to literally write the laws of the grave into the molecular bonds of water. We unleashed the void blight to erase the very concepts of time and distance, ensuring the law of final entropy was absolutely final. So, the result wasn't a victory for one side or the other. It was a perfect synthesis, a new world where the king's crystalline order and the captain's entropic thirst are locked together in a permanent, decaying embrace. A lightning-scarred grave, all overseen by us. This is our final judgment on this world, the culmination of our grand design. The place where life began is now a monument to our final, unyielding logic, a silent, thirsty grave. And so we leave you with this. When the will to exist only serves to create the engine of your own destruction, what's the point of being at all? Contemplate that, because it is the founding principle of the new epoch we have crafted.